The day my daughter got married, I wasn't crying because I was proud. I was crying because, for the first time, I realized I was no longer her hero. That morning, the sky was cruelly bright, the kind of light that makes old eyes burn. Everyone was laughing, champagne glasses clinking, photographers shouting poses. I stood quietly by the car I borrowed, the same one I used to drive her to school years ago. Then I heard her voice, soft but sharp enough to tear through my chest. "Dad can't even afford a taxi. Can you imagine?" Her friends laughed. My hands froze on the steering wheel. I didn't say a word. I just turned the key, drove away from the noise, and left her wedding behind, unaware that before the sun set, fate would make her come looking for me. In tears, the day my daughter got married, I woke up before the sun. The house was still quiet enough to hear my own heartbeat. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the suit I'd pressed the night before. It wasn't new, just the same gray one I'd worn to every important moment of her life. I brushed it carefully, like I was brushing away the years. As I tied my old tie, my hands trembled. I remembered the first time I tied a ribbon in her hair for school. How she'd laughed, saying I pulled too tight. I smiled at the memory, even though my chest felt heavy. I had saved a small envelope money I'd put aside for months. Not much, just something for her to start her new life. I slipped it into my coat pocket and whispered to myself, "It's not about the amount. It's about the love." When I stepped outside, the morning air was cold and thin. The street was full of cars I couldn't afford to look at for too long. I stood beside an old sedan, paint faded and mirrors scratched, but it still ran like a loyal friend. It would carry her today, like it once carried her to school, to college, to every small dream she chased. At the venue, everything glimmered. Golden drapes, white roses, crystal chandeliers, like a movie I didn't belong in. I stayed close to the car, pretending to be busy polishing the door handle, though really I was just trying to hide how out of place I felt. When she finally appeared, my breath caught. My little girl, wrapped in silk and light, she was radiant. For a moment, I forgot everything, forgot the distance between us. Forgot the quiet dinners when she barely looked up from her phone. She smiled for the cameras, for her friends, for everyone but me. And I told myself, it's her day. Let her shine. I waited for a chance to hug her. Just one moment. But there were too many people, too many flashes, too many polished shoes and perfect words. I stood a few steps away, clutching the car keys like a lifeline. Then I heard it, her laughter. Bright, familiar, but the words that followed cut through me sharper than any blade. "Dad can't even afford a taxi," she said, giggling to her friends. Can you imagine? My wedding car is basically a museum piece. They laughed, all of them, and I froze. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone, the carelessness. The sound of someone I didn't recognize anymore. I looked at her, and for a split second, she looked back. Our eyes met. Maybe she saw it, the hurt, the disbelief, but she turned away before I could be sure. I wanted to walk up to her, to ask her why, to remind her of the nights I skipped meals so she could have books. The time I walked miles in the rain just to bring her a cake she'd wanted. But what was the point? Love doesn't need reminding, needs remembering. And she had forgotten, so I did the only thing I could. I got into the car. The same car that had carried her through childhood now became my escape. The chatter behind me faded into music and laughter, but inside there was only silence. A silence that hurt more than any noise ever could. I looked at the rearview mirror and saw the venue shrinking behind me. It felt symbolic, like watching years disappear in reverse. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Only a strange, hollow calm as I drove through the city. People crossed the streets, horns blared. Life went on as if nothing had changed. But everything had. My daughter was a married woman now, and somewhere along the road to becoming that, she had lost the memory of who drove her there. I stopped at a traffic light and looked at the envelope in my pocket. The money inside suddenly felt small, meaningless. I thought about turning back. Maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe it was just a stupid joke. But pride is a tricky thing. Sometimes it's all a father has left. I whispered under my breath, "You already said enough." The light turned green, and I pressed the accelerator, driving toward nowhere in particular. The laughter still echoed in my ears. Softer now, but heavier. I rolled down the window. The cold wind stung my face, but I didn't mind. Pain sometimes feels cleaner than numbness. For years, I thought love could survive anything's distance, time, even death. But that day, sitting alone in that old car, I realized, sometimes it's not the big betrayals that break you. It's the little moments when the person you love forgets who you are. My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. Her name lit up the screen. My daughter. I stared at it, my heart pounding. For a second, I almost reached for it. Almost. But I let it ring. The sound filled the car like a question I didn't want to answer. I whispered again, this time quieter. You already said enough. And as the road stretched ahead, I drove into the kind of silence that only a broken heart can create, steady, endless, and painfully calm. The road stretched out in front of me like an unfinished sentence, gray, endless, and silent. The kind of silence that makes you hear things you don't want to hear, like echoes of laughter that aren't really there. My daughter's words still clung to my chest, heavy as wet clothes. Dad can't even afford a taxi. They played again and again until I started wondering if maybe she was right, if I'd failed somewhere along the way. The city blurred past in streaks of color and noise. Billboards, traffic lights, people rushing in their own little worlds. I drove without knowing where I was going. Maybe I just wanted to get lost because being found didn't feel like a blessing anymore. The rain began without warning, soft at first, then harder, drumming against the windshield like impatient fingers. I turned on the wipers and watched the water smear the world into a watercolor painting. I passed the park on the corner. And before I knew it, my hands had turned the wheel. The car rolled to a stop by the old iron gate, rusted and crooked, like everything else that time had touched. I sat there for a moment, watching the empty swings sway with the wind. It was the same park where I'd taught her how to ride her bike. I could still see it so clearly, the way her tiny hands gripped the handlebars. Her pigtails bouncing as she yelled, "Don't let go, Dad." And me, jogging behind her, pretending I was holding on long after I'd already let go. That's the cruel part about being a parent. You spend your whole life teaching them how to let go, only to realize one day, they've let go of you too. I got out of the car, the rain soaking through my jacket. The smell of wet earth brought the past rushing back. I walked across the empty park, my shoes sinking slightly in the mud. There was laughter once, right here, mine and hers. Now it was just the rain talking. Back in the car, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. I whispered, where did I go wrong? But there was no answer, just the sound of the rain tapping out its rhythm. The phone buzzed again. Her name lit up the screen. I stared at it like it was some fragile thing that might break if I touched it. I wanted to answer. God, I wanted to. But every ring pulled me deeper into that quiet, stubborn pain that fathers know too well, the kind that says, let her learn. I started driving again, slower this time. The roads were slick, reflecting streetlights like cracked glass. My next stop came without thinking, the old ice cream shop by the river. It was closed now, boarded up, but I could still smell the faint trace of sugar and vanilla in the air. I smiled, despite myself. That was her favorite place. Every Sunday after work, I'd bring her here. She always ordered strawberry, even when she pretended she wanted chocolate. I used to sit across from her, tired from the factory, watching her giggle with ice cream on her nose. That sound, her laughter, used to be the proof that I was doing something right. Now, it haunted me. I leaned back in the seat, eyes closed. The world felt small. I thought about how proud I was when she graduated, how she said she'd take care of me one day. I never needed money. I just wanted her to remember the man who carried her through sleepless nights and scraped knees. The man who learned to braid her hair even though his hands were made for tools, not ribbons. A horn blared behind me, snapping me back to now. I wiped my face. I wasn't sure if it was rain or tears, and pulled back onto the road. I didn't notice how far I'd gone until I saw the old church appear through the mist. It stood quietly on the hill, same as it always had, watching over everything with weary eyes. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I hadn't been here in years. Not since her mother's funeral. I parked outside and just sat there, watching the raindrops slide down the windshield. Each one caught a fragment of light before disappearing, like memories trying to stay alive. Finally, I stepped out. The rain had softened now, falling in thin, tired lines. The graveyard behind the church smelled of wet grass and fading flowers. I walked slowly between the stones until I reached hers, my wife's. The name on the marble had worn faint with time, but I didn't need to read it. I could still hear her voice, as if she were right beside me. "I failed her," I whispered, "just like I failed you." The words came out broken. I knelt down, tracing the edge of the stone with trembling fingers. "You'd be so proud of her," I said softly. "She's beautiful, strong, but she's forgotten what love looks like when it doesn't come wrapped in gold." The wind stirred the trees, and for a moment I swore I could hear her laugh, the one that always made everything lighter. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks, or maybe love doesn't leave. It just changes shape. I stayed there for a long while, listening to the rain and the quiet hum of the world. I told her everything I hadn't said in years: the loneliness, the fear of being forgotten, the exhaustion of pretending I was fine. I told her how I missed having someone who understood silence the way I did. Then I stood up, brushing the dirt from my knees, and looked toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, my daughter was celebrating, wearing a smile that wasn't real. I didn't know it yet, but fate was already on its way, ready to pull us both back into a story neither of us expected. I turned to the grave one last time. "If you can hear me," I said quietly, "watch over her. She's lost, and so am I." The rain stopped. For a second, the air held its breath. Then a single drop slid from the edge of the stone, landing on my hand. I don't know why, but I took it as an answer. I walked back to the car, the world strangely still. The wipers squeaked once before I turned them off. The phone buzzed again. Her name glowed faintly in the dim light. I stared at it, my thumb hovering just above the screen. Then I let it ring. Some silences aren't meant to be broken, not yet. Evening had fallen, and the rain was coming down in thick, heavy sheets. The kind that blurs everything: the road, the lights, even your own thoughts. I was parked outside that old church, my hands still resting on the steering wheel, trying to convince myself to go home. But home didn't feel like home anymore. Not without her voice in it. The phone was on the seat beside me, silent now after a dozen unanswered calls. I thought I was done hearing it ring. I thought I'd made peace with that choice. But fate doesn't care about your peace. It finds its own way to remind you that silence can cost more than words ever could. The phone lit up again, buzzing softly against the leather seat. I almost ignored it until I noticed the number. Unknown. I hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice came through, calm but trembling underneath. "Sir, are you the father of the bride?" My breath caught. "Yes," I said quietly. "This is City General Hospital," she continued. "There's been an accident. Your daughter. She's been brought in. You need to come immediately." For a moment, I couldn't move. My mind went blank, like someone had cut the power inside me. The rain outside suddenly sounded louder, almost violent. I heard the nurse still talking, giving directions, but her words blurred into noise. Then I started the car. The tires spun against the wet ground before gripping, and the engine roared louder than it had all day. Headlights sliced through the rain, and the world turned into streaks of silver and shadow. My hands were shaking on the wheel, not from fear, but from guilt. I'd spent the entire day trying to silence my phone. Now I was praying for it to ring again to tell me it was a mistake, that she was fine, that I could still fix what I'd broken. The wipers thudded back and forth, fighting to clear the downpour. Every light I passed felt like judgment, flashing red, yellow, green, none of it meaning anything. My heart pounded harder with every turn, every minute. I spoke out loud, maybe to God, maybe to myself. "Please, not her. Punish me if you have to, but not her." Images flashed in my head: the laughter at the wedding, the words she said, her eyes turning away from mine. I'd left her there, in that moment of pride. What if that was the last time she saw me? The hospital appeared through the haze like a ghost white walls glowing faintly under stormlight. I parked crookedly, left the door open, and ran inside. The floor was slick from people tracking in the rain. The smell of disinfectant hit me like a wave. At the reception desk, I barely got the words out. My daughter, accident. The wedding car, the nurse recognized me immediately. This way, sir. We walked fast down a long corridor. My shoes squeaked on the tile, echoing off the walls. Somewhere, a machine beeped steadily, each sound stabbing into my chest. When I stepped into the room, I stopped breathing. She was lying there, my little girl. The veil she'd worn that morning was gone, her hair tangled, a bruise blooming across her forehead. Tubes ran from her arm, the machines around her blinking in rhythm. The nurse's voice faded out. I moved closer, each step heavier than the last. I reached for her hand. It was cold. Too cold? Dad's here, I whispered, my throat tight. I'm right here. No response. Just the faint hiss of oxygen, the slow beep of her heart monitor. I sat down beside her bed, drenched, shivering, my clothes clinging to my skin. I didn't care. I couldn't look away from her face. For the first time since she was a child, she looked small again, fragile, human. The groom was in another room, they said. Minor injuries. Lucky I wasn't angry at him. How could I be? Life had already done enough punishing for one night. Hours passed in silence. The rain outside slowed to a soft drizzle, tapping lightly on the window. I kept my eyes on her hand, the faint pulse beneath her skin. Every rise and fall of her chest felt like a borrowed miracle. I thought about all the times I'd told her, be careful. All the times she'd rolled her eyes and said, Dad, I'll be fine. And how, deep down, I believed her. Because she was always fine, always stronger than I gave her credit for. But tonight, she wasn't, and neither was I. I leaned closer, my voice breaking as I spoke. You know, I was angry, sweetheart. But not because of what you said. I was angry because I thought, maybe I failed you. Maybe I didn't give you enough to be proud of me. My tears hit her blanket, disappearing instantly. But I would have given you everything if I could. You were my reason to keep moving when life didn't want me to. The monitor beeped steadily. No change. I pressed my forehead against her hand, the same hand I once held crossing the street. The same one that waved from her school gate. The same one that reached for mine during thunderstorms when she was afraid. The door creaked open softly. A nurse peeked in, then stepped back when she saw me. She didn't need to say anything. There are moments in life when words are useless. I stayed like that, just holding her hand, whispering apologies to a room too quiet to care. I should have been there, I said, at least to see you off. To tell you how beautiful you looked, how proud I was. I'm sorry I let my pride drive me away. Then something happened. So small, I almost thought I imagined it. Her fingers twitched. I looked up quickly. Her eyelids fluttered, lips moving faintly. I leaned closer, barely daring to breathe. Dad, she murmured, voice weak, almost lost under the hum of the machines. Don't leave me again. For a moment, everything stopped to rain. The lights, my heartbeat. Those 5 words hit me harder than anything she'd ever said. I squeezed her hand gently. I'm not going anywhere, I whispered. Not this time. The monitor beeped on, steady and alive. And in that fragile sound, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The hospital corridors looked different at night, quieter, dimmer. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I sat by her bedside, the clock on the wall ticking loud enough to feel like judgment. Every second that passed, I wondered if it might be her last. The doctors had been clear she might not survive the night. That sentence. It didn't echo in my head. It carved itself into it. The nurse had asked me to go home, to rest. But how do you rest when your whole world is lying still in front of you, fighting for air? I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, eyes locked on her. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor was the only sound between us. A fragile promise that she was still here. Her face looked peaceful to peaceful. The kind of peace that scares you. Her hand was still in mine, pale and cold. I rubbed it gently, as if warmth could bring her back. You know, I whispered, You used to hold my finger when you were little. Not my hand, just my finger. You'd squeeze it so tight, like you were scared the world would take me away. A small, broken laugh escaped me. Guess I'm the one who let go this time. I took a deep breath and looked up at the ceiling. The light above flickered softly, like it was listening. I never told you what I promised your mother. And just like that, the years folded back. It was raining the day I buried her mother. She'd made me promise 3 things before she left this world. Give her a good life, she said. Be patient with her dreams. And never let her feel ashamed of who you are. At the time, I thought I understood. I swore I'd keep those promises no matter what. But promises are easy when they're made in tears. It's the years after that test, I remembered sitting in that tiny kitchen years later, watching my daughter come home from school, her face red from embarrassment. She'd heard other kids laugh about how her father worked double shifts at a garage. That night, she asked, "Dad, can you wear something nicer to the parent-teacher meeting?" I smiled and said yes, but something inside me cracked. Not because she asked, but because I realized she was learning shame. That's when I started building walls. Not to keep her out, but to keep my pride from falling apart. But in doing so, I forgot that love isn't about pride. It's about presence. The heart monitor beeped once, a little irregular. My chest tightened instantly. Hey, I whispered, leaning closer. It's okay. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere tonight. Her breathing steadied. I exhaled shakily, my voice trembling with the weight of years I never talked about. You know, after your mom died, I didn't know how to raise you. I tried to be strong, but I wasn't. Every time I looked at you, I saw her. And that scared me because she was everything good in my life. And I didn't want to lose that again. I looked down at her hand. The IV line taped to her wrist. I worked late nights so you could study. But in the process, I missed the nights you needed me. I gave you everything I could, except my time. And maybe that's the only thing that ever really mattered. The clock ticked past 2 a.m. The world outside was asleep, but my thoughts were louder than thunder. I wanted to pray, but it felt hypocritical. I hadn't spoken to God in years. Still, I tried. Please, I whispered. Don't take her. Not yet. I know I've made mistakes. I've been stubborn, proud, stupid, but she doesn't deserve this. Give me one more chance. I'll make it right. I swear I'll make it right. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't wipe them. I let them fall quietly, the way rain falls on forgotten graves. A memory came uninvited, her first day of college. She was so excited she barely slept. I had ironed her uniform the night before, badly, and she laughed at how wrinkled it was. She hugged me before leaving and said, "I'll make you proud, Dad." And I remember thinking, you already have. But I never said it out loud, because men like me were taught that silence was strength. I understand now, silence was just another form of fear. The monitor beeped faster suddenly. The nurse rushed in, her shoes squeaking on the tile. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice rising. "She's crashing. We need space." I backed up, hands trembling, heart pounding so hard I thought it would tear through my chest. The nurses worked quickly. Wires, injections, calls for help echoing through the corridor. All I could do was stand there, helpless, watching the one person I'd sworn to protect fade in front of me. Then the long, steady tone, one that freezes the world. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, no, no, not like this." The doctor called for the paddles. The shock jolted her body. Once, twice. "Come on, sweetheart. Please." A third shock, the tone broke. The beeping came back weak, uneven but alive. My knees gave out, and I caught the edge of the bed to stay upright. I pressed my hand against my chest, whispering her name over and over like a prayer. "Thank you." I breathed, "Thank you." The nurse looked at me softly. "She's stable. For now." I nodded, unable to speak. The night dragged on, each hour heavier than the last. I didn't move from her side. I just kept talking, telling her stories she'd forgotten. Confessions I never had the courage to say. And then, just before dawn, she stirred. Her eyelids fluttered. Slowly, she turned her head. And those eyes, those same eyes that used to light up every dark corner of my world, opened. "Dad," she whispered weakly. I leaned closer, tears falling freely now. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here." She looked at me, her lips trembling. "I heard everything you said. I'm sorry." I couldn't speak. I just held her hand tighter. Because sometimes, words only ruin moments that are already perfect in their pain. Outside, the first light of dawn broke through the window, soft, golden, and merciful. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, God had forgiven me too. The morning light felt softer than usual, like even the sun was afraid to wake her. I sat in the same chair I'd been in all night, watching the faint color return to her cheeks. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor was no longer haunting. It was hopeful. When her eyes opened, the first thing she did was look around, confused. Then she saw me, unshaven, exhausted, but smiling through tears. "Hey," I said softly, voice cracking. "You gave me a long night." She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. I thought, "You'd left." I shook my head, reaching for the glass of water beside her bed. Not this time. I helped her sit up, holding the cup steady as she took slow sips. Her hand brushed mine, fragile but warm. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was healing. Then she whispered, "Dad, I'm sorry." Her voice broke, and the tears came before the words could finish. "I was ashamed," she said. "Not of you, but of myself. I thought if I acted like them, maybe I'd belong. I was stupid." I listened, my chest tight. Watching her cry felt like punishment for every moment I hadn't been there to teach her better. She kept talking, barely able to meet my eyes. "When Mom died, I saw how hard you worked. But instead of being proud, I got scared. Scared that love wasn't enough. That money meant safety. I thought if I built a life that looked perfect, maybe it would fix what we lost." I reached out and brushed her hair back from her face, a habit from when she was little. "You don't have to fix what's already forgiven," I said quietly. She looked up, searching my face. "How can you forgive me so easily?" "Because," I said, taking her hand, "love isn't about what you can afford. It's about what you never stop giving." Her eyes filled again, but this time it wasn't from guilt. It was relief. Later that afternoon, the doctor came in with the bill. It was more than I had, far more. I didn't even flinch. I knew what I had to do. That wedding car, the one I drove away in, the one she was supposed to leave her new life in, I sold it. No hesitation, no regret. Metal and paint could be replaced, but not her. When the buyer handed me the cash, I stared at the keys for a long moment before letting go. "Take care of her," I said, and for some reason, it felt like saying goodbye to a chapter I should have closed years ago. Days passed. She got stronger. I stayed with her every moment I could, reading her old stories, making her laugh, learning her silences again. One morning, she said something I didn't expect. "I told him, my fiancé, that I want to wait. I need to fix us first." I turned to her, surprised. "Are you sure?" "You don't have to. I do," she said firmly. "Marriage can wait. You can't." Her words hit me deeper than any apology ever could. That weekend, she asked me to take her somewhere. I knew where before she even said it. We drove to the old churchyard, the same one I'd sat in. Broken and drenched, just nights before. The rain had stopped this time. The sky was clear, washed clean. She held my hand as we walked toward her mother's grave. I could feel the faint tremor in her fingers, but it wasn't fear, it was release. We stood there quietly for a while. The wind rustled through the trees, and the scent of wet earth filled the air. "Mom would have loved the dress," she whispered, voice shaking. I smiled. "She would have said it made you look like her little girl again." She laughed through her tears. "Guess that's what I'm trying to be again." I placed a single white flower on the grave. "Your mom used to say that pride ruins more families than poverty ever could." I didn't understand her back then. I do now. She squeezed my hand. "We both learned it the hard way." "Maybe," I said, "but at least we learned it together." We stood there until the morning sun hit the marble headstone, warming the cold letters of her mother's name. Then she looked at me, eyes red but peaceful, and said, "Let's go home, Dad." I nodded, and as we walked back to the car, she leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was little. The air was light. The silence was gentle, and for the first time in a long, long time, it felt like home. I opened the car door for her, smiled faintly, and said, "This time, I'm not driving away." The mornings are quieter now, not empty, just peaceful. I sit on the old porch, the wood creaking beneath me like it always has. The air smells of wet soil and jasmine. Somewhere down the lane, someone's radio hums an old song I used to play when she was little. Funny how life circles back, not to the same place, but to the same feeling. It's been months since that morning in the hospital. Months since I sold the car. Months since she took my hand at her mother's grave and called me Dad with a kind of softness I thought I'd lost forever. Now, every Sunday, she comes by. No makeup, no rush. Just her hair tied up, sleeves rolled, dirt on her hands, and laughter that feels like sunlight. She says she's helping in the garden, but between you and me, she mostly talks. I mostly listen. And honestly, that's all I ever wanted. Sometimes she hand me a cup of tea and say, "Remember when I used to hate this place?" I smile. "You still hate the smell of fertilizer." She laughs, that same unguarded laugh she had as a child, and it fills the porch like music. That's how healing sounds. I've learned, not dramatic, not loud, just small moments that return when you stop chasing them. I look at her now and see a woman who has finally learned to love without pretending. She talks about opening a small design studio in town, not for fame, not for clients, but because she wants to build something honest. "I used to think happiness meant having everything," she said once, pulling weeds beside me. "Now I think it just means not losing yourself trying." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The truth was sitting right there in the dirt with her, simple, breathing, alive, sometimes at night. I still hear her words from that argument. The ones that broke me. "You were never enough." They used to echo like thunder in my chest. But now they remind me how fragile love can be. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering differently. When I hear those words now, I don't hear anger. I hear fear. I hear a daughter who didn't know how to say she missed me, and maybe, in her silence, she was just waiting for me to speak first. The sun climbs higher, lighting the garden in gold. She's kneeling near the rose bushes, the ones her mother planted years ago, trimming them carefully. Humming to herself, I sip my tea, feeling its warmth spread through my hands. For a moment, I imagine her mother sitting beside us, smiling quietly at the sight our daughter finally home. The house alive again. A soft breeze passes through, carrying the smell of roses and earth. And for the first time in a long time, I don't feel the ache of what I've lost. I feel the peace of what I've kept. Life taught me something I wish I'd learned sooner. Pain can break you, but sometimes it's the only teacher love listens to. I used to think being a father meant protecting her from every mistake. Now I know it means walking beside her, even when the road gets dark, and trusting that she'll find her way back to the light as the sun settles low behind the trees. She stands, wipes her hands on her jeans, and says, "Tea's getting cold, old man." I chuckle. So's my patience. She rolls her eyes, pours me another cup, and we sit, the clink of china, the hum of crickets, the quiet rhythm of two hearts finally at ease. The house that once held silence now holds laughter again. Not the loud, careless kind, but the gentle laughter of people who've survived something together. If you've ever been hurt by someone you love, don't let pride bury the chance to heal. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever say is "it's okay." But once you do, it changes everything. Share this story if you've ever learned forgiveness the hard way. Because love doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to stay.